this is a bigger warning than the subprime blow up. The world is moving away from the dollar, and we haven't seen this kind of movement in the price of gold since the 1970s. This is the best year for gold. Gold's up almost 60% on the year. What's happening now, I think, is just as significant, maybe more so, because now it's not the U.S. that's going off the gold standard. It's the world that's going off the dollar standard. And what this means for America is
Peter Schiff just dropped the biggest warning of his career. And this time, it's not just about inflation. It's about the survival of the U.S. dollar itself. According to Schiff, what's coming next will shake the global economy to its core. The dollar is dying a slow death. The debt crisis is spiraling out of control, and the Fed has no way out. The only question now is, will gold and silver be your life jackets, or will you sink with the system? Because this isn't just another prediction. This is the final warning before the storm hits.
Yeah, well, first of all, gold closed today above 4,200. It was just a week ago that it traded above 4,000 for the first time, and now we're $200 higher than that. Silver closed above $53. That's an all-time record high for the price of silver. Back in the I guess the latter 1990s, when Alan Greenspan was Fed chair, he was asked about gold, when he went to Congress to testify, because he was an old school gold bug. He wrote an article, The Case for Gold, which is in one of Ayn Rand's books, Capitalism, the Unknown Ideal. So he was a big gold advocate. And so he was often asked about gold. And in one of these questions, he said that even though we're not on a gold standard, he said that he uses gold as a tool. And he looks at the gold price as an indication of whether or not he's got the correct monetary policy. And he said, if gold is, up towards 400, that means that my policy is too loose. And if I see it down, at 300, then I'm too tight. Of course, at the time, it was around 350, right? So he said, look, I'm watching gold's reaction to see what it does to know if I've got the correct interest rate, because I'm looking for a market signal. So he said, while we're not technically on a gold standard, I'm using gold as a way to conduct monetary policy, because it's a market mechanism to let me know if the policy is correct. Well, now gold is soaring. And so what that would tell Greenspan, if he was still Fed chairman, is that monetary policy is too loose and that interest rates need to be higher. Yet, despite this, the Fed is poised to cut rates even more. And so gold is a warning sign, A, that the Fed has got the policy wrong, that these rate cuts are a mistake, and that, in fact, rates are too low and they need to be raised. But I also think it's a bigger warning that the world is getting rid of the dollar, that foreign central banks, foreign governments are losing confidence in the dollar as a stable long-term store of value. They have no confidence in the fiscal responsibility of the United States Congress or the president to get his house in order. And they're losing confidence in the independence of the Fed, which is being beat up constantly by Trump, putting political pressure on the Fed to cut rates, print money, create inflation. And so I think the world is moving away from the dollar. And we haven't seen this kind of movement in the price of gold since the 1970s. This is the best year for gold. Gold's up almost 60% on the year. You have to go back to the 1970s to find a year where that happened. And there were several years during the 70s when that happened. But the significance of the 70s is we went off the gold standard in 1971. And when we did that, it was a game changer for the monetary system, and the dollar lost a lot of value. And so gold went from $35 an ounce to $850. But what's happening now, I think, is just as significant, maybe more so, because now it's not the U.S. that's going off the gold standard. It's the world that's going off the dollar standard. And what this means for America is a complete collapse in our entire economy and our standard of living, because over the past 50 years, we've grown completely dependent on the dollar's reserve status. That's how we're able to live beyond our means. That's what makes these trade deficits possible. That's why we can buy stuff, consume what we don't produce. That's why so many Americans can borrow without anybody saving, because we're tapping into the rest of the world's productivity and the rest of the world's savings. And the vehicle to do that is the dollar and its status. Well, as the dollar loses that status, our ability to rely on foreign production and foreign savings is gone. And that means our whole economy implodes, because without foreign production, foreign factories, we can't produce the goods that we consume, and we don't have the savings to finance our massive debt. And so we're headed for an economic crisis much greater than the 2008 financial crisis. That is what gold should be telling everybody, that a monetary crisis, a U.S. dollar crisis, a debt crisis is just around the corner. Right? This is the economic, canary in the coal mine that's dying here. And I think this is a bigger warning than the subprime blow up in 2007 was about the financial crisis that hit in 2008. And when the subprime market blew up, it was obvious to me what was coming, because I had seen years in advance that the subprime market would implode. And I knew that a financial crisis would follow. But most people on Wall Street, including the Fed, actually had no clue. Even when subprime blew up, Ben Bernanke said, "Don't worry about it; it's contained." And I knew that was nonsense. Well, the same thing is happening now. I've been waiting for years. I've been predicting for years what is happening in gold would eventually happen. It's now happening for the very reasons I always warned that it would happen. And now what it is confirming is that the currency and sovereign debt crisis that I've been warning about for decades now, not just years, is finally upon us. And it should happen maybe as early as next year. Well, first of all, going back to the Coinage Act of 1792, right, after our republic was first born, the dollar was legally defined as a weight of gold or silver. So that's what a dollar was. It wasn't that dollars were backed by gold. The dollar was gold. The dollar was silver. And of course, back then there was no paper currency, but there were banknotes that were issued by private banks, but they were just IOUs for dollars, which were gold and silver coins. Now, when the Federal Reserve was first introduced in 1913 as basically a private banking syndicate that issued notes, again, those notes were not dollars. And in fact, even if you take a Federal Reserve note today and you look at it and you read it, it says this note is legal tender. It doesn't say this dollar is legal tender. It says this note. And a note is a promise to pay. Originally, those promises paid dollars. The dollars were gold and silver. Now, in 1933, during the Depression, Roosevelt suspended the convertibility of notes to lawful dollars, and in fact made it illegal for Americans to own gold. And so you can no longer take your Federal Reserve note to the Federal Reserve Bank and get gold.
Peter, why did he do that? Was that they needed the gold for something, or
because the government, they wanted to do a big stimulus, but they didn't have the printing press the way they did today. We were on a gold standard. And so Roosevelt basically took everybody's gold and gave everybody $20 an ounce. And then after they got the gold, they devalued the dollar and said, okay, the gold we just took away from you is now worth $35 an ounce. And that gave the U.S. government a lot of extra money to spend to try to stimulate the economy. That was how they ran this stimulus.
Peter Schiff has made it clear. The warning signs are flashing red. The dollar is weakening, debt is exploding, and history is repeating itself. Only this time, the consequences will be global. Gold and silver aren't just investments anymore. They're survival tools in a system that's breaking apart piece by piece. So what will you do when the next wave hits? Stay informed, stay prepared, and most importantly, don't get caught off guard. If you found this discussion eye-opening, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the bell icon so you never miss the truth the mainstream won't tell you.